Saif, welcome to the show that we're calling The Bold Bunch, in which we're celebrating artists who are drawn to unconventional, off-center stuff.
Okay.
You know, there is that part of your career where you made mostly romantic comedies, which some might say at that time were safe choices. But then you're the guy that did Being Cyrus at a time when Bollywood actors didn't make English films. You did Ek Hasina Thi, you did Omkara, you did Go Goa Gone, which are anything but conventional films. And it certainly feels like more recently you're much more comfortable, enjoying even, sort of diving off the deep end without sort of worrying about a safety net.
I've never really thought about it in clinical terms.
Sure.
That should I do this? Where will it leave me? How will it look? I'm assuming that if it's artistic and if it's kind of forward-looking, then it has its own advantages to do in that sense, you know?
You know, I watched an interview of yours in which you said recently that despite having acted for many years, it's only recently that many pieces of work have come along that have tested you, requiring a different kind of training which wasn't there earlier. So, Saif, when you look back at some of the earlier stuff, even the ones that were very successful, is it hard to relate to those things today?
No, I mean, it's as hard to relate to as, you know, changing political climate, changing attitudes in India, like how things have changed.
Right.
Like, I mean, with fairly sexist culture now because of so many things, including the media, and you know, there's a revolution of sorts going on. So social attitudes keep changing, and people were like that in those days. And I mean, you know, you look at film and you can tell what the prevalent attitude was. And India has changed a lot, and it's changing a lot. So I don't cringe or look back. I'm just saying, wow, we've been through some interesting changes in society also.
Sure. Is there a role that you look at?
But yeah, there were some jackets and haircuts that were like, okay, you know, you need an understanding audience to. Every time I see Ranveer Singh, he keeps playing some rubbish movie I've done from the 90s and says, look at this, look at this. I mean,
he loves it. The old
and
stuff,
I've given him enough material to really have a field day, because there's like rats being pulled out of my trousers. So that's his favorite.
What role do you feel closest to in terms of, or what role do you feel most closely captures who you are as a person? I mean, what is the closest reflection of your true self?
I'm not sure. I think there's a little, you know, there's different facets, and I don't think any film really, I mean, we're starting to be more honest, but I mean, I very rarely walked away from a scene and said, oh God, you know, that's so disturbing. I just watched, you know, my mother die, or my child do something that I would never really want. So it's always, at least the films I've done, a little removed from kind of.
But you know, it was that romantic comedy
I mean, Sartaj from Sacred Games is, I mean, there's a side of me like that. I suppose there's a side like everything. But yeah, maybe one of the romantic comedies with a little, you know, energy and little more charm. I mean, you know, or whatever. Might be closer.
Because it came so easily and so naturally that it almost felt like this is.
Well, it is. I mean, that is what it is.
Right.
I mean, at least those films, you're just playing yourself. Really. I mean, in every film, you're playing a facet of yourself.
Right.
But in those, it's, you know, you don't really have to put on much of a persona, because, I mean, you know, that's what it is.
You know, Omkara was a big turning point, but I feel like it was Sacred Games last year with which you really moved the needle. What would you pick as a bold move? If you had to pick one key decision which you feel has led or contributed directly to where you are today?
You know, I guess Sacred Games is a very bold move, but I've never really thought in terms of it being a bold move. I mean, it made sense to me, Netflix being, you know, such an entertainment giant, and understanding that entertainment is changing. So I suppose that, if anything, was a reasonably aware thing. And I watch a lot of television like that, and I realized there's a difference in that quality. I mean, I remember dear Katrina Kaif said to, I think my manager, that, oh, is Saif doing TV now? You know, and
in that way, yeah.
So there's a difference between Netflix and TV.
TV, sure.
So, which I saw, which obviously from that comment I'm gauging, a lot of people might not have
seen it at the time, certainly.
But I realized that there is a difference. And that's in the quality and in the money and in the kind of the world that's so I don't think it was much of the world on set while making it, and the kind of And the fact that you get nominated for an Emmy just kind of indicates the fact that it is a nice piece of international.
Why do you think the second season of Sacred Games isn't as loved as the first? I mean, even you will admit.
Yes, I will admit. Gosh, I don't know. I guess the story somewhere is a little esoteric, like Sacred Games. In first season, I was wondering, where's the Sacred?
Right.
And then along came the Sacred, and it was a little underwhelming and a little like, funda, and people, I think, wanted a bit more Gaitonde, a little more Sartaj, and a little more action and something more basic. I think, if I may say, we got a little clever and a little bit too clever and a little pseudo-clever, and, let's have an open-ended climax and let's have an open-ended, there were a few things that, actually, I don't have a problem with the climax. Some people still ask me, what happened in the end? Did you save it or not? And I say, does it really matter? I mean, either he saved it, at which point he did, or he didn't, at which point everything blew up. And I guess that's why so some of this I think people didn't appreciate. But my spot boy, my assistant, if that's also a barometer for this country, he loved the first season, like a lot of people. And the bravery of cinema, of having the Kubra character and showing her frontally naked and all that kind of thing. I've never seen that before in any kind of show. But whereas this, he said, the guru and everyone, I mean, I lost interest because it was just a bit much. So there you have it, that's it.
Everyone's a critic.
Yeah, I mean, and everyone's entitled to their opinion. So I think
he's not way off the mark,
no,
actually.
He's not.
Those were
that's what I'm saying.
Problem areas, yeah. Will there be a season 3?
I don't know. I hope, I mean, it's always nice to get a good offer, and if the writing is very exciting and we go into some kind of a prequel phase, maybe, but I don't imagine a sequel would be interesting without Gaitonde and without, any of this stuff. I mean, some of that writing in the first season was really good. So if we can get there, then who knows, why not, Sometimes it's nice to say bye also to a show and let someone else do things,
Are you a lot less invested today in the outcome of your choices? Do you feel more brave about going into things and not necessarily worrying about how they will play out, or will they work, will they not? Because a lot of people wrote off Lal Kaptan from the moment the first trailer dropped.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, what was the question again? Say again, please.
Do you feel a lot more, do you feel a lot less invested in the outcome?
I don't know if I have a choice, really, in that sense. It's not that I'm in unfortunately, in a position where, it's very important to maintain that standard of, box office. And so I think the least I can do is to choose something exciting out of what I'm going to do. And it's kind of maybe a bit selfish, but somewhere I'm also cursed and doomed with a mind that kind of gets turned on by certain things. So when Navdeep said to me, do you want to do a medieval Western? I mean, that sounds so alienating when you say that, but I mean, I could sell that in different terms. But yes and no, of course. I mean, I want to keep acting and I want to keep working in interesting films and get good roles. And in order to facilitate that, in order to make that possible, somewhere you've got to be successful at the box office. So there is tension on that front.
But isn't it true that, one has that luxury of fearlessness at 2 points? Either when one is very, very successful and you can do pretty much whatever you want, or when one has not a lot of success.
Yes, okay.
Because I remember, and then the stakes are so low. I remember meeting you right after Chef, and Chef had done such dismal numbers. I remember you saying, now I can do anything, because it can't get worse than this.
Well, to a certain extent, that is true, and that is why I'm saying if you are in that situation, sometimes it's better to do things that are artistic, at least.
That's what you did.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's some kind of survival instinct.
Came right after Chef.
Yes, it's a survival instinct, I think, of saying that, listen, at least don't get nailed for doing some crap.
Right.
Try and make the best of this situation. But I tell you, and times change, or you get a little lucky, and a couple of offers have come my way that I think are very commercial and exciting. So I hope to blend the two worlds.
Correct. You've got Jawani Janeman.
Well, Bhoot Police is the one I'm
a horror comedy.
Yeah, but it's really nicely written and constructed as a script and as a story. So I think that's something that will bridge these two things.
But I want to talk about that, about those choices you made after Chef, because Sacred Games came after that, Big Gamble paid off, Kala Kandi came after that, which Big Gamble didn't pay off, but there were moments in that film that really popped, and I know that film has a lot of fans. There is my favorite track. I'll never forget how much I laughed. The track between you and the transgender prostitute. There is that moment where you say to her, because you're curious about her anatomy, I want to see your Australia, I want to see your Southern Hemisphere, I want to see your Cape of Good Hope.
That's Akshat Verma. He's crazy and a really nice writer.
No, did that hurt when that one didn't?
No, of course things hurt, and you kind of it hurts a lot. You kind of stay in bed for a couple of days, and then you get up and keep going at it, and that's how it's been for a very long time actually. So yeah.
I want to ask you a question that I know I can ask you, because I feel like you will give me a thoughtful response, even if the question might come off as a little bit rude. When an actor has had a huge failure, the sort that the industry describes as career-ending kind of failure, is it hard to go back home knowing that the partner is more successful? We live in a very sexist country. We live in a world where male egos are fragile.
No, I mean, I think we're far too realistic for that kind of thing. I mean, one understands that, but no, we aren't as chauvinistic. I mean, things change and things go up and down and various things happen. And at one point in time, somebody's more successful than the other, and other times both people are having a great time. But I mean, I've never measured life in those terms. In fact, the success of my life has got nothing to do with box office or what's happening. It's to do with precisely what's happening at home.
Right.
But as long as I imagine there might be pressure if you're not working, and if you're kind of not contributing, and if you're kind of just lazing around and being jobless, as it were. I mean, that would be, I can imagine, a little embarrassing, a little irritating to the partner as well. But an ego thing of, oh, you're doing better than me, or, I mean, I do live with such a glamorous and successful movie star. And it never, maybe it's her greatness also as a person, that it never really feels like a competition, which of course it isn't.
Not, right.
And maybe I can say that, she's a bit younger, so I don't know, whatever games we play to feel better. But yeah, I don't compete or feel bad about that ever.
Yeah. Kareena says that Taimur is obsessed with his father. He wants to do exactly what Saif does. And I remember seeing this. I was in your home a few weeks ago, and I remember her trying to get him to go to his cousin's home, but he wanted to go to gym with daddy.
Yes.
Is this that age where he just wants to? You're the big influence.
Well, I mean, very recently, I mean, he's in a very copying kind of phase where, he wants to do everything and say everything, which is great because, he's learning he's saying please.
Big words if he's trying to.
And being polite as well, so which is really nice. Because I had forgotten, I think, that you have to teach children to be polite, otherwise they don't see the point. Why should I say please? And he's got some help at home, so it's very easy for him to just chuck something and expect someone to pick it up.
Right.
So he has to be, but he's very, very sweet, and he's in that phase where he's copying everything. So you have to be careful.
Are you enjoying sort of, being a dad in your late 40s? I mean...
Yeah, very much. I mean, children are amazing. And I'm more conscious than ever about fleeting moments, They just grow up really fast and they're gone, and the next thing you know, you'll be paying some booze bill, I was going to say, and saying, what's happening here? There's some adolescent partying is happening. And that's life, I suppose, and, it goes by pretty quickly. And nowhere is it more apparent, that speed, than, with how quickly children
grow up, right?
Very, very cute and cuddly one day and then not interested in you the next.
Sarah, of course, is off to a flying start. She's very articulate. She speaks really well. She's got what they describe as Saif's spirit. But your older son Ibrahim also was on his first cover recently, on his first magazine cover, and he has actually said he looks exactly like you. He's acknowledged that. He says that there's always relatives coming up and saying you remind us exactly of Saif. And he says he doesn't know what to make of that. But he says you're his guide when it comes to man relationships.
Yes.
What sort of wisdom have you been imparting?
Well, not a lot. I mean, we've had a couple of chats about his girlfriend and how, how important that should be right now in his scheme of things, which is so easy to say, but...
What is the wisdom that you're imparting in that area?
Well, nothing much except, to tell him that sometimes things seem like they're the most important thing, but you need to prioritize, oh God, really boring of parent stuff, which doesn't make any sense to kids. Like, what do you mean? This is, so, yeah, things like that. And just a general take.
Out of any one of your movies.
Maybe. But what's cool and what's not okay, and kind of just various, from grooming tips to women, really. But, I mean, not as much as I'd like. I mean, they're all on their own in that sense.
Saif, you turn 50 next year.
Yes.
I would imagine that when a person inches towards that milestone, they have an idea of what they'd have liked to get out of the way by the time one reaches 50. Are there things on the list still to be ticked off?
Oh yeah, there's so much. There's just...
And you have a year.
I mean, no, there's nothing to be ticked off by the time I'm 50.
Right.
I mean, I think life for people who are kind of self-made and have earned things themselves is a slow process of, acquiring a comfort kind of that you build up, from a house to some art to whatever, investments, friends, connections, and you build this kind of life yourself.
Right.
And it takes a while. In fact, it takes a lifetime to kind of get to a place. It takes till around 50 to get to a place of reasonable comfort where you say, I can kind of live with this. And everything is kind of representative of that life that you've led. Like my house, if you look around it, I know where everything's from, how long it's taken, and where it's come from. So, it's a humble thing, life and aging. And I mean, it's something we'll go through where, it's still all right, but this is the age where you start getting a little conscious of growing older, of kind of being, of this whole thing ending somehow, and and it's humbling, I suppose, to be a doddering old man at one point, and people say, "Hey, can you get out of the way?" Ooh, it's all these things.
Do you feel like that 50-year-old in your head? How long have you known each other?
I'm still at that point. I'm still at that point where I don't, But you've got to be aware. You've got to be aware that things are changing and there's a lot of new things happening. And I'm very comfortable with, and I'm happy for that. I think you just have to be sure you're in the right environment, Like if you're hanging out in a nightclub or also in a very competitive kind of young zone, then you might feel, oh no. But there are places also for people who should have achieved a little bit of something. Where they can just go and put up their feet and have a nice glass of wine, a nice meal, and just generally take it easy because you don't need to do that stuff anymore. So I think you have to find what the reward is. And if you hang around sometimes too much in, some scenarios, you'll feel there is no reward because it's only about being young. But then I think you're in the wrong environment. So you have to balance that. And for me, it's not an issue.
While I was sort of, looking up what you've been up to, and I'm reading.
I'd quite like to be 60 as well. I mean, of course, you don't want to run out of time.
Correct.
But like, distinguished and older.
But you're like this 50-year-old who's forgotten the way to his own home. There's this video that's gone viral of Saif asking for directions to Pataudi, the home he grew up with.
The guy was laughing. He said, "But don't you live there?" I said, because I was on the phone and we had a new driver which we had hired. So I was driving and there's a sneaky right on the Bilaspur Chowk. Which you can easily miss. So I was on the phone and he had this, Google Map thing, which is sometimes unreliable, on. And I was like, okay, 3 kilometers, and I was on the phone. And then I looked up and it said 6 kilometers. And I said, hey, hang on, I think we missed it. So it can happen.
You know what's really comforting when something like that, when you read something like that, it's like, well, he may be 50 or whatever, but he's still sort of a little bit mad and still sort of figuring his way around the world.
Well, yes, a little bit of that. I mean, come on. that's not the best example, but there's other examples.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's still the one that we get to read about, or
yes,
the videos
which I was like,
viral.
oh no, nothing's really changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very comforting.
Yeah, I guess.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to lots more exciting stuff.
Yes.
Thank you for entertaining us with the choices you've made, and here's hoping that you will continue to make the bold choices, to make the
You know something?
unusual.
It's like it honestly, it doesn't matter. I mean, as long as sometimes I think about commercial success in order to facilitate the job and to keep going.
Right.
But most of the time, I'm having such a good time doing what I'm doing, and I would really hope that I can just continue doing this.
Well, we hope so too.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
hope so, yeah.
Thank you.